Thank you. So we are here today to listen and talk with and dedicate ourselves to collaboration with our military families on the issue that has been a very big issue for California, which is the foreclosure crisis that we've experienced. As all of you know, California was the hardest hit. We are looking at any point in time last year, 7 of the top 10, at one point 9 of the top 10 hardest hit cities in the country. And unfortunately, we know through our investigations and our travels, our military families were not immune from this crisis. And they were not immune from the crisis in terms of how they were impacted by being underwater and then being in the process of foreclosure for their homes, but also they were not immune to predatory lending practices. And when we think about the fact that it is our military families who are sacrificing so much in service of us all, it's particularly outrageous. So I am very honored to be here with Mrs. Petraeus. I actually visited with her in Washington, D.C. last summer, sat down with her, and really had an eye-opening conversation about not only the impact of this issue on our service members and their families, but also what we can do. What we can do through federal agencies such as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and what we can do through the California Department of Justice. So we were here this morning meeting with various airmen and talking with them about the experience that they've had and their dedication to training and protection. And we will have a larger meeting this afternoon with many more airmen and talking with them and answering their questions as it relates to this issue, and of course any other issue that comes up in particular around their need for protection as consumers. Specifically, what we did in the office, in my office, is after my meeting with Mrs. Petraeus in Washington, I came back to my office and sent out a note to my entire staff of over 4,000 people and invited those who had military experience or had an interest in military families to join together in a working group to discuss how we as an office could focus on these families in California and do whatever is possible to increase our ability to give them education so they can protect themselves, and also make sure that they are protected in terms of going after any predators. As you know, California has the largest number of active duty and veterans in the state, and so it is a large population and one that should be protected and taken seriously. When we listen to the stories about servicemen being targeted, they are vast, and I know that Mrs. Petraeus will talk about that in greater detail, but it is the issue of taking advantage of them, knowing that they may be relocated and therefore have a sense of urgency about leaving their home. It is about predatory lending practices, taking advantage of the fact that these military families, of course, are very trusting. It is they, after all, who are fighting to protect the American dream, so they believe in it. And in that way, they have been the focus of unfortunate predatory practices. In California, 2 counties in particular were probably 2 of the hardest hit counties in terms of the foreclosure crisis, and also have the greatest number of military families. In San Diego County, we estimate that between 2008 and 2011, there were 75,000 homes that were foreclosed upon, and that foreclosure rate then is 1 in 16 homes. In Solano County, the estimated foreclosures between that same period of time were 22,000, a foreclosure rate of 1 in 12 homes. So these areas around military bases have been significantly impacted and therefore are a focus for us. In terms of the national mortgage settlement, we were able, of course, to bring $18 billion back to California, but in particular as it relates to our military families. Part of the settlement negotiated would require, as it relates to military families, that the banks would appoint a specially trained member of their operation to be a point of contact for our military families. They will be required, the banks, to provide restitution to those homeowners who were wrongfully foreclosed upon. And for the military families, the banks will and are required to authorize short sales, loan modifications, or other loss mitigation relief to service members, regardless of whether the service member is delinquent. They also were required as part of the national settlement to give special consideration for loan modification and other relief to service members who are required to relocate to a new duty station. And of course, they are required to comply with the Service Member Civil Relief Act. In terms of next steps, as you know, we are focused on the Homeowner Bill of Rights for California, and there is right now a convening of the two houses of the legislature to look at, examine, and hopefully ratify the reforms that were part of the national settlement, and in particular around the issue of ending dual track and requiring that there be a single point of contact for these homeowners who are going through the foreclosure process. And again, needless to say, the bill, the California Homeowner Bill of Rights, something that will benefit all homeowners in California, including our military families. So with that, it is my great honor to formally welcome and introduce Mrs. Petraeus. She is an incredible fighter. I've seen her in the halls of the Capitol. I have seen her advocacy. She packs a big punch in doing everything that is necessary to make sure that our military families have a voice at every table, and that we ensure that they are protected, and that we honor them as we should, as the people who are fighting for all of our rights. Mrs. Petraeus.
Well, thank you, General Harris. It's my pleasure to be here in California, and specifically today at Travis Air Force Base, really to spread the word about what I do in Washington, about the agency that I work for, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the fact that it has a special office for service members and their families called the Office of Service Member Affairs. And my office has some specific tasks that I'm supposed to be doing. One is to see that military families get the education they need to make better informed consumer decisions. We work with the Pentagon to do that. Another is to monitor their complaints to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the response to those complaints. And I do have people in my office that keep a very close eye on that. And then thirdly, I am supposed to be working with other federal and state agencies on consumer protection measures for military personnel and their families. And my visit to Travis today, in company with the Attorney General of California, is a perfect example of that federal-state partnership, where together we can do, I think, a great deal to ensure that our military families are not taken advantage of by those who would pick their pocket. They serve our country. They volunteer to do that. They know that it may be at risk of their lives, and I think we all owe it to them to do everything that we can to support them here at home. And I'm very pleased and proud to be able to be a voice for them at the federal level, and to articulate their issues in Washington, and also to come out and talk to them in the states and to find out what their issues are so I can take those back and hopefully act on them. So thank you all very much for coming out.